Hi, my name is Terry Anderson. I'm going to tell you about the Tea Room. It's a drama. A merger announcement begins to unravel the lives of Jamie and Sophie in ways they could never imagine. The Russian mob has been the invisible hand in their lives, and now that hand is about to reveal the truth. Jamie and Sophie have been in a 7-year committed relationship. They've never been married. And so one day, Jamie gets up and goes to work and says that they're going to announce a merger. And somehow Jamie's father, had lures Sophie over to the merger announcement. And what she finds out is that the merger announcement is more like a merger of not just companies, but of families. So she's just rocked to the core about what just happened. And so she leaves the facility. She goes to pick up her two young sons. She gathers up a lot of stuff and then heads down to Palm Springs to their vacation home while she tries to figure out what's going on. And we look back at what's going on with Jamie, and his friend Miguel Garza comes over after he sees the announcement on TV and what happens after. And he comes into their home, and the place is just torn apart, and Jamie is just there drunk. And he starts asking questions about why are you doing this? What happened? And then Jamie starts to basically tell him everything, the reason why he has to go through with this marriage is because his father and his grandfather have been in the mob for years. And all this information is starting to, from Miguel. Miguel's known Jamie since they both were teenagers at boarding school together. So after he starts digging and trying to find out, what happened, Jamie drops another bombshell and tells him, like, hey, I killed, so I either marry this woman for the merger, or I tell Sophie that I killed her parents in a terrible car accident. And he's like, Miguel is just reeling from the information, and he starts to remember certain things about what Jamie is telling him, what happened when they were in boarding school together, and it kind of doesn't all add up. So later on, you'll find in the story that he asks another one of his friends, Trevor. He says, hey, do you remember that night that Jamie, we had that party in the dorm, and Jamie went missing for a couple of days? And they start to compare notes and find out that there's this Mike Kellogg character who was driving and took off with Jamie that night. Now if we go back to where Sophie's at, she's decided that she's going to go back east to where she used to have her law firm and her investigative group that she owns, Demeter. So while she decides to pack up and start maybe taking a little cross-country trip with her boys, while she's on the road, she gets a call from one of her investigators saying, hey, we just saw on video, we saw some Russian mobsters come in there, break into your house, and looking for you, and somebody's tapped into your GPS and they're trying to find you. So he tells her to just go to Phoenix, or more to the point, go to Tucson, and then drop the car off, and he'll have somebody pick up the car, and then he'll fly her and the boys back to New York, and he'll cover her tracks. So in the meanwhile, Jamie and Miguel are still trying to unwind all this information about what happened in his past. And so Jamie finally tells him the reason why he had to go to boarding school is because his father would beat him and his brother so badly to make them to try to join the Russian mob. They refused, and his younger brother Michael killed himself so that he wouldn't have to be part of this. So all these beatings started after his grandfather went back to Russia, and come to find out, the grandfather is actually the godfather of this particular branch of the Russian mob. So Jamie and Miguel decide that, hey, you know what? There's a lot of things that are, not right. So they're going to have to sneak out of town and try to figure out what's going on along the way. Also, Miguel has basically hit up Demeter to start investigating what happened to Jamie years ago. So Miguel and Jamie go to Miguel's father, and he helps them out by giving them what they need to get on a road trip, cash. He tells them, don't, just stay on the road, try to keep a low profile because this is a bigger deal than everybody thought. So Miguel asked his father to go take care of his wife while he was gone. And so the father Luis goes over to stay at his son's house. What everybody doesn't know is that James and his henchman Yuri have hearing devices in Miguel Garza's office, and they know that they're getting close to, who the banker was, which is an investigation that Miguel has been trying to crack this case for I don't know how long. And so they're like, well, we've got to do something about it. So Yuri decides to go over to Miguel's house. He doesn't know he's gone, but his father's there, and he's, being watch out. And so the first thing he does is call the cops to kind of roust him away from the house. But he knows they're going to come back. So he calls his his daughter-in-law, and tells her to, don't come home. And then Miguel, who is an ex-Marine, sets up almost like this targeting system, or like this funneling system at Miguel's house, because he knows these Russian bad guys are going to come back and hit the house that night. So that starts a gun battle that just it's just epic. And he basically is able to get back down into the basement, or backs down after he creates a shooting tunnel, so that he'd funnel all the bad guys into this shooting gallery, and he just picks them off one by one. But his weapon jams, so he tries to get down to the basement to his exit strategy, but it doesn't work, and he's cornered. So then we go back to Jamie and Miguel on the road, and so they get to El Paso because they don't want to, they want to get a burner phone. So when they finally get the burner phone, and Miguel calls his father, there's no answer. And when he calls his wife at work, they said that that she was at the hospital with his father. So that just sends alarm bells off, totally. And nobody at her office knows where what hospital's at. So then he calls his office, and his secretary tells him everything that's just happened, and that his father's in the hospital. So he calls the father, gets all the details, and then he turns to Jamie and tells him, you know what? They've messed with the wrong people. And he tells Jamie, either you're with me or you're not. So you choose. So Jamie tells Miguel, let me have your phone. So what he does, he calls his grandfather, the Godfather, and tells him he needs him to come back to the United States. So they finally make it to Demeter. So there's another backstory about, Jamie's past and Mike Kellogg that Demeter's been investigating, and they've got their own information. So New York is like a gathering place where everybody's bringing their pieces of the puzzle together to try to fit it together. So it's like everything starts to come together in New York, and Sophie's parents left some breadcrumbs about what was happening, which was that Sophie's parents, her father found out, he was an accountant that worked for James, found out that he was laundering money for the Russian mob. So they pretty much just put a hit out on him, and they actually killed him, but they made Jamie believe that he did it. So everybody congregates back at Demeter back in New York, and Sophie is just devastated. She doesn't even know if she can talk to Jamie, but she said she would never keep the kids away from him. So that begins that. So the breadcrumbs are what Sophie's father left was basically evidence to prove how they were laundering money. And so Jamie figures out it's in accounting code, so everybody couldn't break the code. So he comes in and breaks it. He says, hey, I had a minor in accounting in my business school. So then after everything that's happened, the grandfather arrives. And basically Jamie tells him everything. And when he tells him everything, he's just flabbergasted, because it was their plan always that the third generation would always be out of the Russian mob. So he celebrates, he meets his great-grandsons, he meets Sophie, and he tells, later on, he tells Jamie that, look, I'm going to take care of this, and I'm going to make sure that there's no vendetta about anybody coming after you after I'm done taking care of this. So he leaves and goes to California and asks his son to gather up all the mobsters to this warehouse. And when he gets them there, he tells everybody, every member of this sect of the Russian mob, he says, I'm going to teach you all about loyalty. And so Yuri and James he brings up and makes them get on their knees. So the first thing he does, he shoots Yuri in the back of the head and kills him. And the next thing he does, he goes up and he kisses his son on the side of his head, and then he kills him. And he tells everybody in the warehouse, this is what loyalty is about. And, loyalty to one cause. And then the feds who had wired up this, of course they were following the Godfather the whole time he came into town. So they had the warehouse wired up. So everybody rushes in. And so the grandfather takes the gun and shoots himself. And then it's just like, what the heck? And then the story just blows up onto the TV. And Sophie goes and tells Jamie, what happened. And he looks at her as like, hey, I knew this was going to happen. But it was clean because he basically guaranteed that all the other members had loyalty and they wouldn't come after Jamie because he killed his own son. And then he killed himself because he wasn't going to squeal on anybody. So it was like a complete circle of silence that he created that none of this would come back on Jamie. So in the end, he got Jamie out. Of course, Jamie's assets and everything were seized, and he was grilled for over 3 days after this is over. But Jamie takes his grandfather's body home to be buried by his grandmother and his uncle. And then while he's there, he finds out that his last gift to him from his grandfather was that he set up trust funds for all of his children so that they could be educated correctly and do what they have to do, and also gave him some money that he could live off of. So I hope you enjoyed my telling of the tea room, and I hope to hear from you soon. Have a good one.